Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to round one of the Chris Knott Insurance Touring Car Championship. We are here at Donington Park. It's going to be a very exciting race here in these Alpha 75s. This, of course, a new form of championship for us. We're running 3 different cars over the race weekends. We have here round one the 75. We also have the Giulietta TCR. That should be very familiar to yourselves from the previous first half of the year's running. And then we also have the 156W TCR car. But it's the 75s for now, and we are in practice at the moment. Qualifying will be carried over from the session 2 weeks ago, so we're just enjoying some cars out on track, getting some experience under their belt, the drivers are. But as ever, I am joined by Mr. Lewis Bowers. Lewis, how are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you again for having me after a very interesting week at Silverstone in the Tatus cars. I'm looking forward to seeing how these guys throw these Alpha 75s around this track.
Yeah, there will be a spectacle indeed. We can see them on the Overon spitting flames out the side. It certainly is a characterful car, this one. It's going to be very tricky for the drivers to keep it on the track. That's why this practice is going to be very useful for them indeed around this twisty little circuit here.
Yeah, definitely one of the most famous and well-loved British tracks. Donington Park is a personal favourite from the sim racing experience I have. I don't know about yourself, Reeve.
I can't say I've had too much success there, unfortunately, in my little sim racing experience. Usually it's in a front-wheel drive TCR car, and that tended to end catastrophically wrong. That's why I'm talking about racing and not doing it. Yeah, these cars, 1.8 turbo, 200 horsepower around about if they're working, so the drivers will be trying to eke out as much of that as they can. We've heard from a couple of drivers already that the tyre should be an interesting one to watch out for. These 80s tyres are going to be ones that the drivers are going to have to manage pretty hard in order to make it to the end of the race.
Yeah, absolutely. That could bring in a bit of an interesting strategy call from some of these drivers. Will they start on the medium tyres and look to make a quick stop? Will they stay on the hards and hopefully be able to keep it on the track? The braking points seem to be a big issue for some of these drivers into the heavy braking zones in those hard tyres.
Yes, indeed. We're currently on board with Andrew Whitehead, who is our current pole sitter, actually, and he is being borrowed very closely behind by George Brook Battersby. So we've got some drivers who are slowly learning these cars. We see Andrew just dip onto gravel just a little bit as we head towards the end of this practice session. And in fact, as we head towards the end of this practice session, we've of course missed out on some qualifying action. So I thought it would be interesting to show you what an ideal lap looks like from start to finish. So courtesy of Colin Keneef, what we're actually going to do is we're going to go on board with a decent lap of Donington. So that should give you an idea as to what a decent lap around this circuit looks like. The driver's going to have to try and string a few of those together now. We are at the very end of this practice session, and what we've seen so far is drivers try and learn what tyres that they're going to use. We've also seen drivers struggling with this beast of a car. It's a proper old school touring car, this, and I love it.
Absolutely, all sliding around the track. Not a huge amount of grip on those old school racing tires. It's certainly a different style of driving to most modern cars. It'd be interesting to see who can tame this beast the best.
Indeed, and actually, as we come to the end of the session, looks like Matt Daly has just joined at the very end to get a couple of quick laps in, as he does in qualifying usually. Of course, this won't be full grid position for the moment. I don't think he was actually in qualifying in the previous session, so it'll be interesting to see where the game puts him on the grid. But anyway, we will join you with the action in just a moment as we get ready to go lights out for race 1 of this doubleheader weekend. Welcome back to the action here in Donington Park. It is round one of the Chris Not Insurance Touring Car Championship. We are ready for race one. 20 seconds to go until lights out. Everyone is on the grid. It is Andrew Whitehead on pole, Colin Keneath in second position as the gantry is ready to be lit. It's 10 seconds to go until lights out. Cars spitting flames already. We have 6 red lights and some very, very fiery alphas. And we are away. Andrew Whitehead looks like he got a pretty good getaway, as did Colin Keneath, though. In fact, everyone had a very clean getaway, I would say, as we head down towards turn 1. Andrew Whitehead's going to try and defend from Colin Keneath, although he doesn't have to do much of that, to be honest. As you see, looks like Alan Matthews getting pushed off, or was that Greg Young ever so slightly there? He keeps it facing the correct direction now, as we see some squabbling towards the backs. It looks like someone has had an off, potentially, unfortunately, or Matt Daly making up a few positions there. Andrew Whitehead still defending from Colin now, as we see some cars look very positive on corner entry there. Well, yeah, a relatively clean start to the lap, so well done to everyone for that, as Greg Young and Luke Wiggins swap for position. Looks like Alan Matthews actually got his headlights on there. I don't know if that's some weird type of intimidation tactic from him, but there's a huge train of cars now heading down the track as we see the car spitting flames on corner entry there. The pack staying relatively close together, actually.
All bar, by the looks of it, Guy Sawbrick and Jack Hudson towards the back end of the grid there. I think it may have been an issue. As it appears John Baker's had an off as well, coming out of turn 7, as he's now fallen all the way to the back of the grid, all on his own down there. It's going to be a big struggle for him to get back up.
Yeah. Oh, as we have Guy Sawbrick having another off there. Rather annoyingly, it's decided my stream graphics don't want to show me the entire field. So I'll try and fix that mid-race, as we have positions swapping everywhere. 5th and 7th have all swapped around, as George Brook Battersby hasn't had an amazing start to the race, it must be said. He's down in 9th at the moment, getting some pretty severe oversteer there. Very lucky to keep it facing the correct direction, as Alan Matthews overtakes Greg Young. Greg Young having an off himself, unfortunately. That relegates him down pretty much to 10th position. What a shame for Greg there. He was looking pretty good at the start of the race.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure, going back to George Brook Battersby, he is probably going to be kicking himself. He's started off on the soft tyres, which will be not able to last a full race distance by any stretch of the imagination, as we have some contact, it looks like, on the way in there. But it seems as though George gambled a bit with hoping to get a good start and try and build maybe a gap so he could get a pit stop in and get onto the mediums later on in the race. But that hasn't gone well for him, and he's now down in 7th place, probably a bit annoyed with his slightly flamboyant strategy.
It looks like Greg Young has had an off there as well. Once again, and now down in 14th position for Greg. So what a shame this race, much like for George, hasn't started out the way he needed.
Some very interesting tyre strategies, as we were discussing in towards the end of practice. The intel from the drivers seems to be that the mediums will not make the full race distance, which means that these guys on the mediums, we've got at least half the grid running the medium tyre. They will have to stop at some point, and when that will be is up to them. And will these guys who are having a weaker start, the likes of Greg Young and Guy Sawbrick, will they be able to maybe fight some positions back towards the end of the race when those medium runners pit?
Indeed, we just saw Paul Millman having an off himself there. Luke Wiggins also having an off. The driver's really struggling to keep these tricky Alpha 75s on the track, it must be said. It makes for some exciting action, though, nonetheless. Andrew Whitehead still out in front at the moment. Then he's done very well to keep the very fast Colin Keneath behind at the moment. Just about a second separating those two as we start a new lap.
Yeah, absolutely. That leaders' battle looks as though they're pulling away from the rest of the pack. That's going to be a very interesting fight, especially as the race winds up. Both of them running the hard tyres, so both of them seeming to think that they can get to the end without stopping. All 3 of the top 3 at the moment actually running the hards, so they're all taking a bit of a gamble, and it seems to be paying off, because obviously those faster guys on the softer tyres should be pushing them a lot harder than they are at the moment. Matt Daly, the highest medium tyre runner in P4 at the moment, isn't really challenging those leaders as much as he would like to.
He is not. Now he's got past Will Harper. He'll be hoping to push through the air a little bit and try and catch up to that pack filling up the podium. For now, we saw it was a very brave move into turn 1 for Matt there. He made it stick, though. Such is the skill on display from Matt. As you see, Will Harper doing a very good job of keeping behind him, as it looks like Alex Smith was taking quite an interesting line alongside George, who has had a nice recovery over the past couple of laps to find himself in 6th position for the moment. Very nice move on Alex there to get past. However, Alex fancies his chances into the next corner, though, looking up the inside just a little bit and decides to think better of it. Although, does he? He's thinking about a move under braking there, I think, but George defends just for the moment. We're going to come up to the inside of the corner now. No, George, yeah, he is defending very well indeed. Nice clean racing from George there. Less than a second, well, was less than a second, now about a second separating Andrew Whitehead and Colin. Still, we could be on for a very good battle between these two on the hard tyres.
Yeah, absolutely right. It seems to be a couple of trains forming, as is often the way with these sort of races. We've got those lead pack out the front with Andrew Whitehead and Colin Knief, and then 3 drivers of Alan Matthews, Matt Daly, and Will Harper, who seem to be pretty much nose to tail. Matt Daly obviously looking to make the most out of his tyre advantage before those tyres start to fall off. Again, I think George Brooke Battersby in P6 has really got to pull something out of his pocket now if he's going to make those soft tyres work. Either try and push them as much as he can and box early, or try and run them a bit longer, see if he can make them last as long as the medium tyre guys are, because it seems as though his strategy hasn't really gone his way.
Certainly not. He's going to have to work miracles on those mediums. We are with Andrew Whitehead and Colin Knief. Andrew Whitehead has allowed a couple of mistakes to creep in on this lap, and Colin Knief is now very close behind indeed, as we had an off for Alan Matthews. What a shame. He's running very well indeed at the start of this race, and unfortunately for him, that he is given that position to Matt Daly, and I feel like we're about to have another change for position based on how the next corner goes for these two drivers. As we see, once again, I'm still fixing the stream graphics. In the middle of the race, as you do, we see a bit of weaving from Andrew Whitehead there. The car spitting flames on the overrun into the corner there. About half a second separating the two drivers. Will that stay the same on exit? It pretty much does. Looks like Andrew Whitehead got a little bit of a better exit there, ever so slightly. Of course, it's an open setup championship. Colin has given everyone a baseline setup that should be working, so it'll be interesting to see which driver is running which setup, and will that make a difference here at Donington?
Yeah, absolutely. Often with these cars, you'll find the older cars, it tends to be a bit of nuance in the way you can set the car up to behave a little bit. Small changes can cause quite big differences in car behavior. A lot of the sliding you have to manage, and you have to be able to kind of accept the fact the car is going to slide on these older tyres and work with that. And a lot of flames coming out of these cars as they're barbecuing the exhausts and sliding around this track. It looks amazing from our perspective.
Indeed, it does. Seeing a lot of drivers making a bit of contact, as you mentioned, they're trying to work with the car, trying to slide it through the corner, just push it through and carry the momentum. It's not working for some drivers in battle, unfortunately, as we see Colin Knief still keeping within a second for now, and Steve Knight has had contact again. He's now down in 14th position. It looks like Rosie is going to try and make a move on Alan Matthews there on the inside. It was very brave under braking there. Didn't quite work out, unfortunately. However, she has got the next couple of corners to make that move, as Alan Matthews gets a bit messy on exit there and dips onto the grass just a little bit. Some very good amateur driving on display here from Rosie, from Jack as well.
Seems to be that some of these drivers, with the very hilly circuit that is Donington Park, some of these drivers are struggling. Well, the crest of the hill, when the car falls away from you, the tyres get very loose, and some of these drivers having their kind of incidents and their spins where they're maybe not expecting the car, or expecting the car to do a little bit too much through turn 7 at McLean's. It's a bit of a crest of the hill, and the weight goes away from you. You almost get a bit of air, and you're mid-apex, so you're not expecting the car to do anything, or you're not wanting the car to do anything unpredictable, and it does. Whether that's because these cars are Alfa Romeo touring cars from yesteryear, or whether that's because the track is a bit tricky, it's up to you to decide. But certainly the better drivers, especially those two at the sharp end of the field, seem to be managing quite well.
Indeed, we see Matt Daly setting the fastest lap of the race so far. Those mediums working nicely for him for the moment, but we're only 10 minutes in, so let's see how that develops further on into the race as Luke Wiggins concedes a position to Steve Knight there. Colin Knief then still staying in about half a second gap to Andrew Whitehead. Andrew Whitehead running very nicely here indeed. Both of these drivers are actually been impeccable so far. As we see, actually, I noticed that Andrew Whitehead. Oh dear, is that Paul Millman? It's Paul Millman. He's been struggling so far in this race, and it was a spectacular donut for style there, I think. I've had a lot of position swapping around there. There's George Brooke Battersby. What a shame for him there. He's had a nice recovery so far, but unfortunately for him, he's found the gravel facing the wrong direction, conceded the position to Will Harper, and he's going to have to once again work again on those softs to try and push up the grid. Will Harper finding himself in third now as Matt Daly's had enough as well after setting that fastest lap. Unfortunately, maybe the medium and soft tyres possibly, Lewis, starting to overheat and starting to come to the end of their life already.
Yeah, absolutely right, Reef. It's a very difficult game to play because obviously with these guys, they really want to push these tyres to the absolute limit as much as they physically can. But unfortunately, especially when you have those spins, that chops laps off of your lifespan of the tires. If you spin up and lose the rear axle and light the rear tires up, you've lost. You're shooting yourself in the foot, really. I know how tempting it is to just put your foot to the floor and try and donut your way back into the straight line, but unfortunately for these guys, that is going to cost them dearly.
Indeed, seeing Paul Millman having another off then, and I've actually noticed Andrew Whitehead on the entry to turn one. He's taking a lot of liberties with the track limits there and using as much tarmac as he can find. Using the pit exit to set up the car nicely for turn one. It seems to be working for him. In sector one, he tends to be dropping Colin by just a couple of tenths so far every couple of laps. We see Greg Young setting his best lap of the race so far. Rob Whitney also setting his best lap of the race so far as well in the low 150s. So we've got some nice little groups of kind of different paces setting themselves up now. Will Harper finding himself in third at the moment. He's going to have a very hard task ahead of them, though, keeping that position. He's got Matt Daly and George behind him. It's not an enviable position, it must be said.
Yeah, absolutely not. Those two are very, very sharp drivers, and will be looking to capitalise on or looking to regain some time from those. They're both having a spin a few moments ago.
Indeed, and of course, for these leaders out in front, especially for Colin, he doesn't want to try and push too hard. If he can look after his tyres a little bit, maybe afford to drop back from Andrew just a little bit, he can find himself with a bit more pace towards the end of the race, as we see Matt Daly getting past Will Harper there. That was on track and that was clean, so well done to both drivers there for keeping it on the tarmac for now. It's not easy in these Alpha 75 cars, as we've seen so far. I see the car under braking there, just how much camber the front end's carrying. It must give them a little bit more turning, but I can't imagine it's particularly nice for the tyres. Colin Knief saying his fastest lap of the race so far, actually. So everything I've just said about conserving the tyres is clearly not what he's got on his mind. He's a racing driver, and he's looking to take that top spot of the podium as we come across our first lap traffic. And Colin Knief has a bit of a moment on the exit of turn one there, keeping it facing the correct direction just about, but a nice slide for style there. And George comes into the pits.
Yeah, it seems as though he's decided to pull the trigger on that stop to get onto a different set of tyres. What tyres he will be changing onto is up for debate. Will he go for a set of mediums or another set of softs, perhaps, as we're over the halfway mark in the race? So he could potentially be looking to stay on the softs. But yeah, sorry, Colin Knief, as you said, potentially looking to hang back and now make the most of a bit of clean air and a bit of front tyre. Get back into that tyre window, as we so often hear talking about, because he's now fallen back to about 2 seconds behind the leader. But we're not sure. We talk about these soft tyres and these medium tyres. We don't know quite how the hard tyre is going to behave after such a long run, do we?
No, that's a very good point. They could find themselves struggling towards the end, and George might have pulled a bit of a blinder there because he did a very good job to keep the soft going for as long as he did, given the fact that he had a few spins. If he keeps it clean in the second half of the race as the fuel load gets lighter, he could have some decent pace. maybe the mediums would probably be the safer option, but we'll see Rosie looking very racy indeed, catching up to Luke Wiggins. I've seen her a few times through this part of the track. Unfortunately, it hasn't quite worked out this time. A little bit too much speed, maybe, a little bit of understeer. Has put her into the gravel. But yeah, she's looking very racy through this sector, as Colin Knief has found about half a second again on Andrew Wyatt as they start the next lap now.
Yeah, again, back to George Brooke Battersby, is he's come out in a bit of clean air. Obviously, he's got that battle between Wiggins and Rosie, but once he gets clear of that, again, a lot of clear air, a lot of time to use those soft tyres to his advantage and build up a bit of momentum and hopefully make back some of the places that he lost in the pits. Because again, he's got some hard tire runners in front of him. He's going to have to fight those on track. He will not have the opportunity to undercut them if they were required to or had to stop because of tyre issues.
Very good point indeed. I'm really looking forward to seeing how the hard tyres last at the end of the race. Speaking of making grid positions, Alan Matthews, he obviously was running very high indeed at the start of the race, had a big moment that saw him relegated to the lower positions, but he is now pushing through the grid nicely, getting past Rob Whitney there, currently fighting for 8th position. He has Alex Smith ahead of him, who's had a very nice, relatively quiet race actually, up in 7th. James Rose, new to the championship this season, so welcome, currently running nicely in 6th. Greg Young in 5th, Will Harper in 4th. We have Matt Daly, who is in 3rd once again after the off that he had before, and Colin Knief still fighting for 1st position as we see the car spitting flames there. That is just such a cool sight. I just love how it's on the side of the car as well. It's just drama.
Yeah. Very reminiscent of some muscle car style side exit exhausts as all those whopping great big flames as they come down into these corners, and really pushing the absolute limit of the brakes to just get these cars stopped. They're only about just over a ton and a half, so there's not a lot of metal to stop, but the brakes are quite old.
Indeed. I'm just watching, actually. George Brooke Battersby is slowly making his way. He's in the points now. So I'm sure, given how the race started for him, he could be fairly happy with that. And the fact he started on the softs, I didn't think it was going to work, to be honest. But we could be on for a good result for George here, especially if all it takes is a couple of drivers in front of him to make mistakes. We've seen it happen so far in the race, and it could very easily happen again. There's a few more gaps now, but I wouldn't count out a spin from at some point for anyone, really. Yeah, the driver's slowly now starting to settle in. We're in the final 10 minutes of the race, pretty much. Everyone's found their bit of track that they're occupying, and everyone is looking to try and salvage some points from this. What has been quite a hectic race at the start there, in particular. Wasn't really sure who was going to have a pirouette.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. These drivers seeming to struggle to get used to the track after maybe not having that qualifying session as they would normally have to just have some more track time, or maybe it's the lack of experience in these sort of cars, or there are a million factors that play into it. If you've had a particularly long day at work, perhaps you see some guys just not switching on as quickly as they possibly could do.
Indeed. Oh dear, who's that having an off there? That is lapped traffic. It is John Baker in 15th at the moment, being lapped by Andrew and Colin. But yeah, you raise a good point about people not just being used to the car. That's one of the good things, I think, about the championship in the second half of the year is it doesn't matter if you're good at the 75 or you're good at the TCR, it's changing every single race weekend. So don't get too comfortable in one car because you will find yourself struggling in another.
Yeah, absolutely. It just brings an extra edge that you don't tend to see in any kind of forms, certainly not real sort of the real world racing. You don't see that at all. So it's an extra benefit of the sim racing community is that we can afford to do this kind of thing where we just say, yes, you like that car, do you? Well, next round you're driving something completely different. Have fun. See how you get on. So yeah, I really like that. I think it's a cracking way of doing it. Matt Daly in P3, I don't believe he's pitted to get rid of those medium tyres.
No, he hasn't.
A huge amount of time left in the race. Is he potentially looking to stretch those tyres all the way to the end? And if he is, where's Will Harper behind him? Will Harper's not that far behind him on track to potentially capitalise on any kind of lap time dropped.
Indeed, he's about 9 seconds behind at the moment. And yeah, you raised a good point there because Matt could... Well, I mean, if anyone can stretch a tyre out and still have a lot of pace, it's Matt. But he's going to have a real task on his hands, keeping it on track towards the end of the race, I can imagine. So the car's still looking fairly pointy on turn, and maybe a little bit of understeer there. The car's still looking quite pointy, though. And of course, he doesn't have anyone pressuring in him too much. But yeah, I'm sure at this point, he's probably trying to make it to the end on the mediums, which I wouldn't have expected to have happened, really, but we never know.
Yeah, no one, going into this, we were made to believe that it was going to be damn near impossible to get those medium times all the way to the end of this 25-minute race. But could we be seeing a bit of wizardry from Matt Daly to stretch those tires all the way to the end?
Indeed.
Oh, sorry, go on.
I was thinking George was going to try and move around the outside for just a second there. He was looking close enough to do it on exit, though. He's got a much better exit than Rob Whitney, and they're pretty much going to be side by side now. He's obviously on those fresher softs, and on the straight, it looks like he's got the move done already. George running very nicely now in 9th at the moment. He came out of the pit at about 12th, so slowly he's whittling down those drivers in front. He's got about a 10-second gap now, and then the cars start coming thick and fast. I reckon if he keeps his pace up, he could be battling with someone like with the likes of Greg Young or whatever. We see a little bit of oversteer kicking in for George there.
Yeah, so about 10 seconds to the car in front of him, and George was about a second and a half quicker on that last lap. So he's going to be eating away at that gap to Alan Matthews, and potentially we'll see another on-track battle, and hopefully he'll be able, for his sake, he'll be able to get past as clean as he did with Rob Whitney there. I think Rob conceded slightly, knowing that those tyres weren't working for his favour, and just said, you know what, I'm not going to fight it into this corner. I'm going to live to fight another day and keep my point-paying position.
Indeed, a sensible decision from Rob Whitney there. James Rose has been overtaken by Alex Smith. These two have had a very nice race indeed, it must be said. Nothing to write home about, which sometimes is all that you want when you're after some points. However, he is looking fairly racy actually behind Alex. I think we could be on for pretty much a three-way battle. Wow, the car seems to snap very aggressively into that corner there. It didn't send him off or anything, but the car's looking a little bit twitchy, it must be said. Now he's got Alan Matthews for company. Alan Matthews thinking about a move around the outside there. James using quite a lot of the curb on entry. Alan's got his headlights on there, filling up the rearview mirror of James, and they're going to be side by side. James squeezing him as much as he dares. Under braking, who's going to be braver? It looks like it's going to be Alan. Alan, a very good move under braking there to box off James, and now he's hunting Alex.
Yeah, great move there on the brakes. Just being brave, knowing exactly where you're going to get the car slowed down. Once again, James not fighting too hard, realizing when the battle's lost, it's better for him to slot in behind. And I'm sure if George Brooke Battersby can see that, he's licking his teeth at the concept of the cars in front of him battling, as we know that slows you down big time, and just gives the guys behind you an opportunity to just eat away at that gap.
Indeed. Alan Matthews actually is looking. I've noticed the cars around him are looking very animated and almost like they're really pushing the car quite aggressively. Alan's looking pretty calm and composed. He's not, apart from when he's making a move, it doesn't look like he's hot lapping or anything. It just kind of looks like he's enjoying a nice Sunday drive, and it's working well for him. He's keeping Alex Smith company indeed. Both got their headlights on there. Just looks so cool, these old 80s Alphas. Very angular styling. I believe these are... I'm going to get absolutely hounded if I get this wrong. I believe the Giugiaro styled. These 75s look very cool indeed. Very of their era. But Alan Matthews then, still about a half a second gap. He's gonna have to work hard through this sector. Maybe he can get a move done in the same place that he did last time. As we see Alex Smith messing up the corner exit a little bit there, and Alan Matthews might have the better line into this corner if he's brave. He does. Alex somewhat conceding the position there, maybe. However, we start heading onto the straight now with Alan Matthews out in front. So that recovery drive for him is coming now, and we can see in the background is George Brooke Battersby. So as you were saying, Lewis, this battle has slowed them down somewhat, but then again, George is running very quickly indeed.
Yeah, he's been eating away at that gap at several seconds a lap. He's been doing some really, really good, consistent 146, low 146s. So could we be about to see him do some work on these guys in front of him, potentially come in and very late on in the race, as we tick down now, being able to throw a few moves around and show us his wheel-to-wheel style, as we've seen him do some very, very good, consistent, fast laps.
Indeed, speaking of wheel to wheel, Alan Matthews and Alex Smith are still battling each other very closely indeed, as Alex Smith gets very messy on exit of the final corner there. Very lucky to keep it facing the correct direction, very lucky to have not taken out Alan Matthews as well, but it goes to show these cars are tricky beasts. You can see just how much the battling has slowed down these drivers here, as Alan Matthews has an error through turn 1 as well, and Alex Smith is off the circuit. This is exactly what George wanted. Apologies for the error or the glitch in the liveries there. That's showing us Will Harper's car. There is Alan Matthews. Will Harper currently running in 4th position. But yeah, James Rose actually has taken advantage of this quite well. Actually, he's found himself back in 7th now. But this freeway battle looks like it could go on to the very end of the race, which isn't that far away, actually.
I think it's about to become a four-way battle as Brooke Battersby capitalises on that mistake into turn 1. Those two drivers, maybe a bit of anger about the incident at the exit at the last corner of the last lap. James Rose taking his time, being calm and collected and capitalising on the mistake as Brooke Battersby potentially looks at a nose up the inside.
He did. He's being very aggressive over the curbs. Yeah.
He almost looked as though he thought twice, but he's trying to stick
look
it
at
there.
the slipstream chain here. These are 80s wedges, and any slipstream you can get will be very useful indeed. See George again, yeah, he's being very edgy on the inside there, trying to make space for his car. It hasn't quite worked out this lap, and it's allowed Alan Matthews to get a little bit of an air gap between the cars behind. However, we are now on the penultimate lap of the race, and at this point it is still Andrew Whitehead who has led from turn 1 of lap 1. He's done a very good job indeed to keep Colin Keneath in 2nd behind. Matt Daly's found himself in 3rd position after a very good recovery from that earlier spin. Will Harper doing very well in 4th, Greg Young in 5th, and then this battle for 5th or 6th position. Not going well for Alex Smith there. He's having to pit. I don't know if that's fuel or... that's an odd one.
It's very strange. He's on the hard tyres, so it's definitely not a tyre issue unless he's had some real... I don't think he had any moments where he might have caused any damage to his tyres. It might be some
drive-through.
Damage from...
Looks like a drive-through.
Potentially for the exit of the exit of turn 11 incident on the previous lap where he came together with... who was it in front of him? It was Al Matthews in front of him. They had a bit of a tangle. All 3 positions for George Brooke Battersby there. That was just a gift to him as he now has one less car to fight on track as he's coming up behind James Rose with only 1 or 2 laps to go now as they struggle for those positions.
Indeed, and George is going to be fighting James hard into the next corner there, trying to go around the outside. Unfortunately, not enough of an advantage there on the soft tyres. Will it work onto the straight now? It doesn't look like it will, maybe? No, he's got some very good pace down the straight, actually. If he's brave on the braking, he could have 6th position for the taking. The leader is now on the final lap, and under braking, George Brooke Battersby just looked very confident indeed. Those softs working well for him there. Very good driving from George, taking 7th position. Matt Daly's in the pits.
Daly there, maybe not. It seems as though he couldn't make those tyres get all the way to the end of the race. We were
with a lap to go.
Surprised. Yeah, we were surprised that he was trying. Maybe there was a drive-through. I'm not sure.
It looked like he was in his. Yeah, it looked like he was in his box. Maybe he realised he had enough of an advantage over Will Harper that he fancied whacking a set of softs on. What tyres is he on at the moment? Is he?
I believe he's on. He's still on the mediums. It'll be. I didn't see him in the pits for very long, so I'm a bit of a strange one there for Matt Daly. Maybe he went from softs to soft, mediums to mediums, perhaps, or I'm not entirely sure. A bit of a strange one.
Indeed, and it looks like Colin Keneath has been struggling to keep up with Andrew Whitehead at the end of this final lap of the race. Then about 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds separating these drivers as we come to the end of what has been a very exciting 25 minutes indeed. Lots of drivers battling with this very tricky car indeed. We're heading around the final corner now. Andrew Whitehead led from turn 1 of lap 1. Very impressive drive. He's going to weave in celebration, and it is a very well-deserved celebration indeed. Andrew Whitehead takes the race win. Colin Keneath 2nd position. Very good job from the leaders here to fill out the top spots of the podium. We have a little bit of a wait for Matt Daly to come around the corner now. But yes, Andrew Whitehead takes round 1 of this weekend.
Yeah, good race there. Really, really well managed race from start to finish. It's always very difficult to lead when you've got traffic all around or got someone always on your pace behind you in your mirrors. As it looks as though there could potentially be a change for position between Al Matthews and Brooke
Could
Battersby as they
be
come up to the line,
Matt Daly
coming through the
crossing the
last couple of
line.
corners. Coming through the last couple of corners, it looks as though Brooke Battersby's on a charge here. Could he maybe get it done on the brakes or on the run to the line? Is this going to be a last change for position as Al Matthews dives to the inside to defend that position as much as he physically can? As they ride up towards the line now, who's going to get the better drive? It looks like it's Alan Matthews
It
for
does look like it's Alan
P6.
Matthews. Yes, well done to both these drivers. George, a very good recovery drive indeed. It looked like George just had a little bit of a snap on exit there, obviously trying to get on the throttle as quickly as possible to try and get the advantage over Alan Matthews. It didn't work that time though. However, very impressive driving nonetheless.
James Rose in his rookie season, unless I am mistaken.
This is his rookie
Uh,
season, yes.
yeah. Although it looks as though he may have been beaten to the line there. He dropped down a position on our timing screens, swapping with Alex Smith. So has he run out of fuel, perhaps?
Oh, yeah,
He is
very good point.
crawling down the hill.
He's run out of fuel. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong car then. I was.
It
Yeah.
looks as though he's run out of fuel on the line and been beaten to eighth position by, or ninth position by the charge of who was it? Alex Smith, I believe.
Yeah, Alex Smith was able to take 8th position then, because Alex had to pit. He was the first kind of the weird towards of the end of the race pitters, but it looks like Alex Smith is now enjoying 8th position. The points awarded for 8th as Andrew Whitehead finishes his parade lap, spitting flames, singeing the hairs off of his pit mechanics there, and he can enjoy the nice haul of points that comes from race 1. However, we will be back in just a moment for race 2, the reverse grid race, where he will have to fight his way through the pack. It's certainly going to be an interesting one. Very good driving, very good cars, and yeah, I look forward to joining the action in just a moment. See you in a minute. It's race 2, the reverse grid race. Are you ready? I certainly am. It's going to be exciting here at Donington in these cars. We have some a big switch around in the grid. I've unfortunately forgotten what the switch around is on the grid. I just read it, and unfortunately, my brain clearly doesn't work anymore. But it's going to be exciting nonetheless. The timing screen will tell us in just a moment. We've got about 15 seconds till lights out. Car spitting flames already. We've got in the top 10 mostly drivers on the hard tyre. George is doing a copy of his previous strategy is on the soft, so watch out for him on the first few laps. He could be very quick indeed. Looks like we've got a gap in the grid. I'm not sure who that's for, but the gantry is lit and we are away. Not much wheel spin from the driver on pole there by the looks of things. He's defending against George hard indeed. Alan Matthews got a very good launch there. He's now fighting for third position, possibly higher, as Alex Smith. It's James Rose currently in second position, looking to defend from Alan Matthews there, while also trying to fight with Alex Smith. So a lot of action here in the first couple of corners, just the sea of Alpha 75s. There's currently 6 drivers basically within a second of each other, as we see. George Brooks Battersby has unfortunately dropped back a little bit. Looked like he nearly found some grass there. Was very lucky to keep it on track, and someone has found some grass. Is that Will Harper, or was that Guy Swarer? I'm not sure who that is, unfortunately, with that livery. It's Alex Smith. It's Will Harper's livery on Alex Smith's car. As we see Alan Matthews opting to take the rallycross route to take first position. James Rose and Greg Young fighting. Oh dear, big crash from James Rose. It looks like he took out Colin Knief. And is that Jack Hodson? No, it's Will Harper he's taking out as well. What a shame for those 3 drivers there. Colin Knief probably the best off out of that big bunch there, but not how those drivers wanted this race to start. Matt Daly's found himself in a very nice position. Indeed, second position currently against Greg Young and Alan Matthews. 3 very quick drivers with Andrew Whitehead in 4th as well. So the leaders have found a way to the top of the pack. And we could be on for a very good race between these 4 indeed. As Greg Young, unfortunately, a big crash for him. Oh, what a shame. I'm not quite sure what to make of that one on exit. And he's just collected a few cars, Lewis.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks as though it's been a bit of a carnage. We saw quite a very well-behaved start to the first race, and this has just been absolute carnage. A load of drivers getting caught up with big moments and just collecting every car around them. And it looked as for a moment George Brooks Battersby had recovered from his slightly poorer start, and then he's collected in that second incident there, and he's now all the way down in 12th position. Matt Daly keeping his nose clean, and Andrew Whitehead as well. Again, Andrew Whitehead, who, as we remember, won the last race, although he's just popped into the pits, I believe.
No, Colin Knief who's just pitted. Andrew Whitehead's still out on track at the moment, about a half a second between him and Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews recovering nicely. Getting through the pack, just absolute chaos there. It's hard to really remember what happened. So many accidents, and unfortunately a few drivers getting involved who were innocent parties.
Yeah, absolutely. Some guys have lost out big time there. Some guys have made up quite a few places. Rosie Hudson up into P7 now, probably having an absolute dreamer at the moment, thinking, oh, how on earth did I get up here so quickly? As Andrew Whitehead sets a purple first sector, he's going to be looking to repeat his performance, get into the lead, and just stay there. Matt Daly is probably thinking, no way, Jose, you're staying behind me.
Of course.
We could be on for a bit of an interesting rest of the race after a chaos first few laps.
Indeed, as we see Steve Knight and Alex Smith attached to each other side by side pretty much through every corner. They've done a very good job of keeping it clean for the moment. Alex Smith not amazingly quick through the speed trap down the straight here, about 118 miles an hour. We've seen drivers get up to about 120 on certain setups. However, Alex got a much better exit through the corner there over Steve Knight, and they're going to be side by side now. Who will come out victorious? It's going to be Alex Smith, much cleaner under braking there, much more confident on the brakes. And now Steve Knight has Rosie Hodson for company. This battle has helped out Rosie immensely, doing a very good job to keep the nose clean herself, and is now looking to potentially fight for 5th position based on how this goes. However, she does have James Rose behind. James Rose, we've seen quite a good driver as well. As they start on the start of the next lap, we'll be looking. So we have quite a few cars actually heading into turn 1 together. Steve Knight having a bit of a moment, unfortunately putting him down into 9th position. We did see as well, actually, Colin Knief and Greg Young. Greg Young, I imagine, especially having damage from those incidents and having to pit. So that's relegated him basically to the bottom of the grid and has allowed drivers to basically run away and head. Colin Knief is going to be very quick and will try and push his way through the field, but Greg Young's got a pretty big gap between him and Colin now, obviously owing to the amount of damage that he had.
Colin Knief there, coming out of the pits on the medium tyre. So he is definitely going to be looking to set some absolutely blistering laps to try and fight back. And Greg Young coming out on the soft. So these guys who have had to pit early on are clearly deciding, you know what, I've had some damage in the opening laps. I'm going to come out now and I'm going to set these timing boards alight with some blistering laps. I'm going to get back involved in this chaos of a midfield battle that's currently going on.
Indeed, maybe Greg using those softs to try and push through the midfield and then just kind of defend towards the end of the race, because 20 minutes they will struggle. But Colin could actually be on a decent strategy here. We saw that the tyre deg wasn't as aggressive as we thought it would be in race 1. So maybe those mediums can get him to the end and get him to the end well. He will push through that bottom of the midfield a little bit. So yeah, we could be on for a good result for Colin yet. Andrew Whitehead, he's in the position that Colin was in against Andrew himself. In the previous race, he is doing a very good job of staying behind Matt Daly. Unfortunately, he's wanting to get in front of Matt Daly, ideally, for him, but it's not quite working so far.
Yeah, Matt Daly seems to have changed his strategy slightly. I believe in the first race he was the brave medium tyre runner who stuck out as long as he possibly could. Had to pit very late on for mysterious as yet unknown reasons. But he's on the hard tyre this time, so maybe thinking that actually it will be a better, safer bet to just stay out and stay running as long as you can.
George Brook Battersby there, hanging it around the outside through turn 1, trying to get the move done on Rosie. It's not quite worked out for him yet, though. It did, however, through turn 2. He just carried a bit more speed on that outside line, and Rosie now has James Rose for company. Trying to defend 7th position now is Rosie. She's doing a very good job indeed, keeping the car on track at the start of this race. It was absolute carnage. What tyres is she running? I can't quite make out, unfortunately.
She's running the mediums.
Okay, so she could potentially carry this to the end of the race if she defends from Will Harper, who is trying to claw his way back up to the top of the field there. And unfortunately, he collects Rosie with him. What a shame for Rosie there. I think she was pretty much an innocent bystander there. Will Harper, maybe the car a little bit unsettled by the curb, has unfortunately collected Rosie as he recovered the car, keeping it in a straight line. What a shame for Rosie there. Let's hope that we've seen that she's battled very well against Steve and Rob in front. Let's hope that she can carry that on in the final kind of 20 minutes of this race then.
Yeah, absolutely. As we've seen so many times, unfortunately, these drivers just there's a bit of contact there.
Yeah, a bit of bumper cars. I think Steve lost a bit more speed than he was anticipating over that curb there, and a bit more speed than Rosie was anticipating, and it has allowed Rosie to take back 10th position as Steve's car looking very unhappy there. Poor Rosie's car, a bit of bodywork damage on that previous lap there, just collected another shunt courtesy of Steve. Luckily, she has once again managed to keep it on track at a reasonable rate, so good job to her for that. Currently trying to defend the point scoring position, 10th, still about half a second separating P1 and P2 then, as we have George getting past Alex Smith then for 5th position. So after a pretty poor start to the race, George is once again looking to be fairly comfortable in the points for now. He's got quite a bit of competition behind him now.
Colin Knief, if we can just jump down to P14 to find him absolutely flying. He's just set 3 purple sectors.
145.2.
He is absolutely flying. He's in a good bit of clean air, and he is hunting down those leaders at a rate of knots. I think that just shows his pace, as we've seen in spades over the past few seasons. He is absolutely flying. Who's that facing the wrong direction?
John Baker. He looks like he struggled with 75 so far at this track, and that was not the safest rejoin. I'm not sure how much of that was his fault. He was trying to get it off the track, so good job to him for that.
And you won't believe it, Reeve. Colin Knief has just set a purple first sector, so he's improving on himself as well.
With traffic to deal with as well. Very good job.
Absolutely flying. I think this could be angry Colin with a bit between his teeth. For reference, that lap is a good second quicker than the personal best lap of Matt Daly in first position. So he is really going to be eating into that lead.
Yeah, he's got to be fighting for the points at least towards the end of this race if nothing goes wrong for him there. running very nicely. We've seen weekends like this from Colin before where we think it's all over. However, he just claws it back. Well, I say claws, he just absolutely dominates and finds himself doing very nicely indeed. As we have a fastest lap from Alex Smith there, that fastest lap coming courtesy of a battle with Will Harper. Will Harper in 7th at the moment. George Brooke Battersby kind of at the front of this little train that's been going on for a few laps now in 5th. Andrew Whitehead then. Still only just half a second. Oh dear, what's happened for Colin there? Unfortunately for Colin, I'm not sure if there was... I don't think it would have been contact with John because John was a little bit behind. But maybe Colin just getting it wrong on the final corner and finding himself back in 14th again. That hopefully hasn't taken too much momentum out of him.
Yeah, I'm sure it won't have. I'm sure he's able to clear his head and get back into that groove.
Yep, a close one for Alex Smith. This is going to get particularly difficult to commentate on. Cars with the identical livery. Alex Smith closing the door on Will, who was trying to look down the inside there. Alex Smith getting a little bit of oversteer, a little bit of dip into the gravel that allowed Will to catch up so quickly. Now about 3 tenths separating them. As we head into the next corner, we can see George and Alex Smith battling themselves in the distance. So everyone is enjoying a good bit of racing action, no matter where they are in terms of grid position. For now,
I think we've got a little battle happening down in P13 and P12 with John Baker and Jack Hudson. Look very close to each other on the radar and on track as well. They look as though they're maybe having a bit of a tussle. Obviously not point-playing positions, but it's always good to see cars getting their elbows out and really having a go at each other.
Indeed, it's going to be interesting to see how the dynamics of this battle change. Well, wow, Jack was taking a very aggressive line over the curb's end and went flying. I think is he still? Yeah, good. He's still with us. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this battle deals with the very fast traffic of Colin Keneath. Of course, Colin's usually used to lapping at this type of pace. This isn't the case. He is going to have to fight for this. However, he does take 13th, and now he has Jack in 12th to contend with. As we see the battle between Alex and George. Oh, yeah, I'll try that again. Alex and Will raging on as ever. As Will looks down the inside once again and get very brave there to make that move, Donny. Luckily, he didn't make any contact there. They're going to be pretty much side by side now. Is he going to try it around the outside? He doesn't. He thinks better of it for now. As we saw, Alex got a little bit of an error, came through before on that lap. It didn't come out on this one, though. Oh, wow. What? Okay.
What a big contact there. They're both spinning there. It looks as though...
Yeah, Alex has been able to keep it vaguely pointing in the correct direction.
Yeah, he got very, very brave over the curbs up the inside there. Maybe getting a bit... losing his patience a little bit and just throwing it up the inside. And James Rose there capitalising to come back up to 7th after a disappointing start for him. A disappointing opening half to the race. Starting on pole, finding himself knocked far down the grid due to some shenanigans, shall we say, in the opening laps. Now finding himself in 6th place on the hard tyres, looking to just make as many places from mistakes as possible. A little update on Brooke Battersby in P5. It looks as though he's lapping very well on the soft tyres.
He's pitting.
He just jumped into the pits earlier than expected. I think he went a little bit... Or did he come in? I think it was about the same sort of time.
Yeah, it was probably around...
the first race.
If not, a little bit lap later in the previous race. Actually, no, it will be around the same time. I don't think the tyres in the last race would have extended any more. So a pretty intense battle going on for 13th between John and Jack, as we saw before Colin had to push his way through. Long may this continue, as we see Jack's car getting a little bit twitchy on exit there, keeping it in the correct direction. Luckily for him, as Alex has Rob Whitney to contend with now. It looks like Alex had a little bit of a moment that allowed Will Harper to get past for 6th then. Much cleaner than the previous overtake attempt, as Colin Keneath is now ahead of George Brooke Battersby. So this is going to be an interesting one, actually. George is going to be on some very fresh tyres indeed. Colin is obviously very quick, but has a little bit older tyres. He doesn't need to pit again. So Colin could really ruin George's race here.
Yeah, George has come out again, as he did in the first race, on a second set of soft tyres. So what does that mean for his overall performance? Does that mean that Colin is going to have to fight to keep him behind him? Will Brooke Battersby realise who he's behind and think, if I can stick to him, we're going to make mincemeat of this traffic and we're going to push each other all the way up
Side
back
by
into some
side
good
for
positions?
James and Will, heading into the corner. Then James has the inside line, but Will, very aggressive under braking, closes the door entirely. Very good move for Will there. That's the type of racing that we like to see. Elbows out entirely, and he secures 5th position for the moment. But yeah, we'll just join the action with Colin and George again. George staying on the tail of Colin.
Yeah, they look to have made up a position. I believe they're now running in 11th and 12th, closing in on Steve Knight in P10 for that point position. Once they start getting into the points, they will run into a lot of cars. There is a lot of very close on-track battling happening. A lot of pairs of cars running around and fighting each other for the positions and letting the cars in front of them escape. Paul Millman, I believe it is, in P4 at the moment, looking
Yeah,
like he's in the middle of no man's land, just lapping,
he's running
keeping
very.
his
Yeah,
tires
he'll
going.
be happy with that. Race 1 didn't go exactly as planned for him, having fewer errors. Maybe the tyres not happy with a few spins, but I'm sure he'll be very happy indeed with just staying in this nice high point scoring position.
That might play in his advantage as well. He is running the medium tyres, so being in such clear air
As we
could
have
just mean he is able to get to the end of the race on those mediums.
Steve Knight, unfortunately, off there, promoting Colin Knief into 10th and George into 11th. As we have actually Rob Whitney and Alex Smith, they were battling fairly closely. Their gaps opened up a little bit now. However, it is by no means sealed for Alex. Is 7th. It looks like Rob is looking very racy indeed and has caught up just a little bit. However, it's not going to be quite enough for this corner. But yeah, joining the action again with Steve. He's still having it off, unfortunately. Colin heading through the corner that we just head through. Oh, there's traffic there. It looks to be Rosie. Rosie's race, unfortunately, fortunes were turned around after that contact with Will at this corner, in fact. And Rosie concedes the position to George. If she gets her elbows out here, she could really, really make life difficult for George now. As we see Colin be freed, and he can now just kind of run. We saw the pace that he had earlier on in the race. We've now got just under 10 minutes of the race remaining.
Yeah, can Rosie cause a bit of havoc for George, and can Colin use that as a reason to get further in front and maybe cause even more of a headache for George, as he looks to have done a job on the brakes and got past Rosie on the last corner of this lap. That not looking good for Rosie. She's now out of the points, unfortunately, after a disappointing start. She looked to have some really good pace in race 1 and some really good battling instincts as she kept her elbows out and kept fighting.
Yeah, unfortunately, it looked like the racing gods had another idea for her, and a couple of collisions later, and she is still don't call her out of contention, I'd say, for the points. I think, you know, a few misfortunes up in front, and she could find herself in the point scoring positions yet again. Obviously, the siblings now actually are pretty much occupying a very similar bit of track-ish. There's still a gap between them, as Jack has actually just registered there. Yeah, they're not actually. They're a few positions apart, as Jack has immense amount of understeer on corner exit of the last corner there. It was quite impressive, actually. I don't know if you saw, the steering angle was ridiculous and the car just wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah, that is a bit of a downside to sometimes these older touring cars, just absolute pigs to get turned into the corner.
Yeah.
Rob Whitney up in P8, I believe we were on watching him now, is on the soft tyres. So could he be Rosie Hudson's way back into the points? I wonder. If he has to pick, could that be Rosie's relief, as she can take that position back and get up into P10 and steal away that last point?
Quite possibly. It was easy work for Colin Knief, as that is the case for Colin on Alex then as well. Colin now finding himself in 7th. This recovery has gone his way indeed. George is now in 10th, actually, but this is a 4-way battle for 7th pretty much. Colin is going to try and run away from it now. It's going to be a 3-car battle then for 8th position, as it looks like Alex is getting very untidy there. Alex has been on the receiving end of a bit of contact and a few mistakes there, and those tyres are probably screaming as a result of it. Rob Whitney is separating him and George, but George's challenge against Colin has kind of come to an end, really, if this lap doesn't go his way.
Yeah, it looked as though it looked as though he could use um, the kind of following almost. You know, oftentimes when you're racing with another car, even if that car is quicker than you can sit behind them and just use them as a bit of extra knowledge, a bit of, especially with a driver of the caliber of John Knief, you can just sit there, Colin Knief, sorry, and you can just sit there and go, okay, where do you brake into this corner, or what line do you take, and that actually provides you with the opportunity to make a little bit of lap time. Where you can just kind of crawl back. Obviously, he was again in the middle of no man's land with Colin after that pit stop, and he's now up into P9, looking to make as much of an advantage of his remaining 5 minutes as he can. And I think, you know, power to him. It's been a very good recovery for the both of them.
Yes, it has. It's gone very well for Colin in particular, I must say. That nice gap now between him and Alex, about 5 seconds. And speaking of gaps, the gap between Paul and Will has closed quite considerably. There's now about 2 seconds separating them. And Paul is going to have to work pretty hard to keep Will Harper behind. He will be scoring very nicely in the AM Championship. It must be. Alex has not had enough. That's what I was worried about there. We saw it happen previously in the race. George now in 8th. He's now going to try and close that 5-second gap. He's going to have a tough job of it, though. Speaking of a tough job, yeah, Paul is going to try and keep Will behind. But yeah, Paul should be on for some good points in the AM Championship here.
Yeah, potentially we've been, you know, if we could be seeing Paul just, you know, relaxing a little bit, allowing his tyres to relax a bit, so he can use up as much of that remaining grip in those mediums in the last few minutes. We saw him in the, as I said, in the middle of no man's land with acres of track in front and behind. And Will Harper on the hard tyres will have an inherent amount of grip left that he can use, as we see the gap between the front two, as with the first race, of slightly different drivers in slightly different positions. But yeah, these two up in front are doing very, very well to keep it very tidy and keep on a very close pace with each other, matching each other 10th for 10th as we see them go around the second to last corner. It's amazing to see these guys just sticking with each other in very, very tricky cars.
Yes, it's much like the battle that we saw at the race 1 there, doing a very good job indeed. Speaking of doing a good job, Colin Knief found himself in 6th position, then getting past James Rose. That gap between him and George building even more. Colin has really found a groove now, and the lap times haven't really dropped as the tyres have got older. The fuel loads have got lighter, but he could soon find himself, if the battle between Paul and Will don't go as planned, Colin could find himself in 4th.
Absolutely right. He's currently lapping a bit of timing screen information for you. He's currently lapping 3 seconds a lap quicker than Will Harper in P5. He is eating away at that 10-second gap, which I believe will be a 10-second gap for not very much longer.
Exactly. This battle will, of course, slow Will up, and Colin lapping at that rate towards the end of the race. They could be on each other on merit anyway, as there's a little bit of rubbing as racing there on the start-finish straight between Paul and Will. Will really getting his elbows out. He's going to try and hang it round the outside. Does he get the move done? He does. Very nicely done indeed for Will. He secures 4th position for himself, and Colin will be looking to try and gain on Paul Millman. Paul Millman, we've seen struggling with the pace just a little bit towards the bottom end of this race. However, Colin has got a little bit of a slide on through turn 1, dips the wheel into the gravel just a little bit. However, not too much harm done there. Seeing Colin's car, actually, if you look at under braking, it's just so kind of active and twitchy. He's really, really on a knife edge in terms of that setup in his 75.
Yeah, I think he's absolutely caning that car. He's driving every single lap like a qualifying lap. He is using as much of the grip as he possibly can just to try and get at that gap. Paul Millman doing very, very well, you know, getting some very good points for the AM Championship, as I believe his nearest rival in Championship is currently Rob Whitney in P9,
Yes,
P10.
and yes, could be P10 in just a moment. These two have been battling very nicely indeed against each other, and this looks like it could carry on to the end of the race. He's going to try and go side by side into the next corner then. He has the inside line, he does have the advantage, and he does take 9th position for the moment, using quite a bit of curb there. Is Alex, and on the straight then that gap has built just a little bit. And the gap between Will and Paul has actually grown to the point where Colin, with just a few minutes left of this race, Colin is soon going to be knocking on the rear wing of Paul's car, fighting for 5th position then, potentially, is Colin Knief.
what a recovery drive from Colin Knief
Yeah, it's
there. He is,
P16 at one point.
yeah,
Oh
he has
dear,
showed
who's...
some.
That's Guy Swarbrick.
I believe that's Guy. Yeah, having some issues.
Yes, just doing a spot of parallel parking on the start-finish straight, getting out of the way in good time for James and George as they start their next lap then. Just want to bring attention to the leaders, who we haven't seen that much in both races, the leaders of the race, because there's been such good action in the midfield, but you can't ignore the really, really impressive driving that has gone on for 50 minutes worth of racing here at Donington Park. Less than half a second separating these two drivers, spitting flames on Overrun. The old school turbo 1.8 litre Alpha 75 has done an immense job to kick off this Touring Car Championship then, as Andrew Whitehead is looking to keep the... well, that got very close under braking for Andrew then. Lucky not to make contact. They're going to start another lap then. The penultimate lap we are on at the moment then. This is the final lap of the race. What will happen with the lead?
Yeah, it looks as though Andrew had maybe got a little bit impatient, perhaps just misjudged his braking point slightly after a long race.
Yeah.
But he could be looking to make a move here. Could he be looking to steal that double win? Could he be sitting back and going, actually, no, the championship is more important. I'm gonna stay here and take what has been a very good 2 races.
Indeed, yes, this will
Will
help.
Matt be able to keep him behind him?
Yes, this will be very good for his championship. It will see him in the lead at the moment. A first and a second position for Andrew Whitehead, with Matt Daly and Colin echoing closely behind in terms of the standings.
I believe Colin Knief's had an incident by the
He
looks of the
has.
timing screen.
He has. He's dropped back down to 7th, allowed George to overtake now. What a shame for Colin there. It came at just the wrong time, really. He could have been on for a good position. It wasn't too bad. He's only a few seconds down, but not what he wanted, really. Every point matters, even this early on.
Yeah, it looks as though they'll have one more lap for Colin to get past. Get past Brooke Battersby there, as the leaders are just about to come across the line on their final lap. So yeah, will he be able to fight back and re-steal that position? Will he be able to take back, show his pace? Will Brooke Battersby be able to get his elbows out big time and just keep him behind? It looks as though they are going to be really, really close towards the end there, as we see these leaders coming up towards the final corner after a very, very good race. Very clean, very tidy after a chaotic opening few laps.
Yes, and it will be Matt Daly who exits the corner in the lead for the moment, and a very, very well-deserved victory for Matt Daly, followed closely behind by Andrew Whitehead. Both drivers with impeccable performance for this, the first round of the championship. 2 different races, 2 different drivers. Well done to Matt Daly and Andrew Whitehead. Matt Daly taking the race to win. Alan Matthews actually been running very nicely in 3rd, pretty much without mention. He's done a very good job indeed. It's going to be looking to be side by side then for Colin and James. James doing a very good job of defending there, keeping Colin behind just for the moment. Will he be able to do it as Alan Matthews crosses the line to round out the podium? Will Harper running 4th. Colin Knief has taken George Brooke Battersby for 6th position. Sorry, apologies, I said James just a second ago. George has the inside there, but looks like there's a little bit of oversteer for him as they head towards the final corner. Now they are side by side.
Oh, this is going to be a very interesting finish.
Yeah, Colin has the inside line there. Will he defend on exit from George? It looks like he will. He's got a fairly good exit. Takes 6th position just as he comes to cross the line, taking 6th. George very close behind, taking home 7th, flashing in celebration there. Very good driving between these two there. Great, excellent racecraft.
Yeah, really good recovery from both those drivers after a very poor start. Or a very disappointing start, shall we say. They've both done incredibly well. We've seen some great battling all up and down the grid today. Some really, really good sort of elbows out racing, but also keeping it respectful. More often than not, giving each other just enough room, as we see Rosie crossing the line there in P11. And some victory donuts from Matt Daly.
Very, very apt. Very well deserved there. I'm hoping Andrew Whitehead is taking part as well. No, he's just enjoying a nice, comfortable parade lap there, spitting flames as you would, but yes, always like to see a bit of victory donut to do. Rounds out the evening quite well, I think, as we have the rest of the grid coming to the end of the race then. So it may not have all been on track, but it was certainly exciting. Definitely didn't disappoint there, and we are moving on to the Julietta's next round, so looking forward to some front-wheel drive understeer action.
Absolutely right, and it will be a very big test for these drivers to see how they can deal with the complete change, the kind of massive sea change from 1980s. As we see some twin donuts there, the 1980s touring cars to the more modern Giuliettas.
Yes, indeed. So, until then, we have a fortnight until that round, but between then, we have the Hungaroring in the Formula Alpha Championship. It is currently Colin Knief in the lead of that championship. Will he be able to carry that momentum forward into a very different circuit that is the Hungaroring? So, until then, it's a good night from me, and goodbye from Lewis as well.
Yeah, very much so. I look forward to seeing you all soon.
Great. So, until then, good night.